I think we should start a business where we are giving people accessibility to a sort of AI dating model where they can have an AI um, date, not a date, but they can sort of begin to have a relationship with an AI model. But really, it's a marketing company.
Wait, what? Go. Explain more. Interest peaked.
No, I'm just fucking around. But here's the thing with what do we call in this podcast?
Hyper-personalization in the age of AI. So it's like everything is now going to become hyper-personalized using AI.
Yeah, exactly. So the company will develop some sort of, it would just be, like a chat GPT, but it's a girlfriend or it's a boyfriend. You're building a relationship with this.
Just quick, what about all our, you forgot a whole bunch of other like letters and pronouns, guy.
Oh, well.
Wait, okay. Oh, guy, are you serious? This is like so one-dimensional, man. Like binary choice between the two, guy or girl. That's it. You're not going to allow wolfkin or foxkind or wormkin or zeshes. Like, what's going on?
Yo, you mad stumped me. My mind came to a complete stop when you said that. That's so funny. Yeah, no, my bad. You're right. You're right. I need to. This is just an idea that I just thought of like 2 seconds before the podcast. So I haven't thought of it all the way through. And you're right. That's definitely something we're going to have to talk about when we are setting up the algorithm, when we're setting up the training data. But basically, it's just you log on and it just starts off, hey, how you doing? And it just leads from there. And basically, the goal is to sort of develop a relationship with this AI. But the whole time, the AI is just collecting data on your interests, your likes, and after it has enough training data, it then begins to use that training data and sort of manipulate you into making certain decisions and buying certain things, investing in certain things, doing certain things, acting a certain way. Sort of what actually happens a lot of times in relationships already. Fuck.
Yes, that's hilarious.
But there's someone behind it, you know what I mean? And that's why it's a marketing company, really. It's a dating service for people who are lonely because we talked about this on a previous podcast that some people are having difficulty finding a significant other as it is. Jumping on this website at least solves that hole that you are wanting to get filled. That sounded kind of fucked up what I just said. But anyways, you know what I mean.
And if you're into what you're into, really.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And yeah, basically it's just providing a service, but it's hijacked as a marketing tool. This is how I see the future of hyper-personalization. How did you call the podcast, guy?
In the age of AI.
In the age of AI, yeah.
Okay, so just to summarize, are you saying that everybody is either trying to fill a hole or have their hole filled?
Yo, both, guy, both. Yo, I'm trying to fill a hole and I'm trying to get my hole filled.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean, guy? Yeah, 100%. No, I meant like what we talked about in the other podcast was that there's some people are not having the opportunities to meet someone because of how things have been changing. Some people aren't leaving the house as often. Women aren't looking for husbands as often nowadays as they used to. At least companionship has changed a little bit, and I think there's lots of lonely people, and a dating AI service could fill that void for those people. But obviously, talking to an AI model on your computer is not going to fill that void, but it's probably going to be a step in the direction of having a robot girlfriend or a robot boyfriend or all of the other categories of things you could date that you mentioned earlier.
So I agree with you in a sense, and I disagree with you in another sense, right? So I agree with you that, like, yeah, they're not going to replace physical people in the same way. Like, there is definitely something about being close in physical space, like proximity wise to someone in physical space, and sharing experiences with people and that sort of connection that you can develop. And then as you scale that out with like greater groups of people, that sort of shared consciousness that you can experience, or shared state that you can experience with large groups of people. But on the other end of that, I'm like, AI stuff, man, I think it can do it in a completely different way. And I think it's going to be ridiculous. Like, I see what you're saying. I love this idea. It's hilarious as well as very practical. And even though we're joking about certain things, like they're realistic as well, right? So where could this potentially go with that is, I see it more than just being a companion, like, or a dating thing. This is like your own personal artificial intelligence, or neural network or large language model assistant, or multimodal, right? Like, so it's going to be all of that, tied into an AI agent, right? And this is going to become not just a companion or a boyfriend, girlfriend, or any number of different thing you want it to be. This will be your, like, life companion in some way, right? Like, there will be like legitimate use cases. Like, you can feed these things immense amounts of data. You can create more long-term memory with LangChain and Pinecone and different databases and ways of querying that information. Like, this is going to take things to the next level. And the people who get onto this early and really start to understand it and utilize it effectively and usefully are going to have an immense advantage over people who do not.
I agree. Every piece of technology can be used for good and bad. It just depends on how you want to utilize it. I was making a stupid joke, and it's an evil plan that I could see somebody having, just because I've been so jaded by a lot of things that have been going on in the world. So now I immediately see the negatives in a lot of things, right? And obviously I see the positives too, but pointing out the negatives is hilarious for some reason to me, until it actually happens, and then it's like, what the what the fuck, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But regardless, like you said, the way I can make sure that I don't let those things affect me is by utilizing it for myself in a positive way. For what did we say today? We talked about optimizing. Yeah, it's basically you utilize it to optimize your time, not having to do mundane tasks. You can really optimize a lot of different types of tasks in order to free up your time to do more things, other things at least.
Yeah, I think automate over optimize. So it'll be automate those tasks. So you can largely automate quite a number of different things. And so that allows you to sort of play at a higher level and not have to worry about being so down in the weeds as much. You'll still need to go down and make sure that the error correcting and that kind of stuff. But essentially, it's going to allow you to play at a much higher level of abstraction where you can get a lot more done for your time and energy. Now, like, so you said an interesting thing there, which was like, it's an evil plan or an evil idea. How? How's that evil?
If I'm creating, or at least if I'm not creating this AI dating service in order for it to be a marketing company, it would making it into a marketing company in the meantime, like even if I didn't have that evil plan from the beginning, I turned it into this marketing company. Basically, I'm feeding it data that the AI model will then correspond or influence the user with, right? So if I want, for example, to do some sort of political shifts or get people to vote a certain way, or get people to invest a certain way, or buy certain products, I'm able to sort of give that data to the AI model, and then the AI model will sort of direct conversations in those directions and manipulate the user into doing what I want, basically. that's the evil part of it.
So are you saying that anyone that nudges people like that, like via the mechanisms you're saying, like slowly starts to show them different things or suggest certain stuff to them, etc. Anyone that does that, that's nudging people in a certain direction based off motives and whatever else, is evil?
It's an interesting point. See, the way I'm looking at it is that because you're having such an intimate relationship with this AI model, it's such an easy way to use it to manipulate somebody with, right? Because when you watch the news, you can, not everyone does this, obviously, but you can sort of critique what is being said, how it's being presented, do your own research, right? But if it's essentially your wife telling you something, right, and you understand it's an AI model, I think that you just have this, it'll be a weakness. You won't have the same ability to sort of discernate. Is that the word, discernate?
Discern.
Dude.
Differentiate.
So I've passed the point. I am now speaking better in Spanish than I am in English, dude. Living here is fucking my English up, dude. So this pod is good practice. Yeah, you won't be able to discern.
Yeah, or differentiate one or the other. You're combining two into one. I like it though. It's kind of funny.
between manipulation or not, right? But see, I understand your point because somebody could just influence your wife. The news can influence your wife. Her working can be, people at work can influence her. Her friends can influence her. So she is naturally becoming influenced by the world, and then projecting her opinions and thoughts onto you, and could possibly persuade you to do certain things and make certain decisions. But it's when you program an AI model to specifically manipulate somebody, it's almost like attacking that person, right? So although it happens naturally in the world, I think like a specified attack on somebody to manipulate a specific person using AI model is it's just like a different level, right? I don't think we can say it's the same thing.
Yeah, you're right. Two different levels. So, but are you saying that any time that you're specifically manipulating or nudging somebody in a certain direction, that is in and of itself evil, right? Regardless of the nudge, right? So, say you use that AI model to get someone who isn't exercising, who's living a quote unquote unhealthy lifestyle, or all their markers are out of whack, etc., or their health markers, sorry.
Yeah.
And then you nudge them in a direction that helps them to, lead a more healthy lifestyle. Is that still evil?
Because you're building a relationship with this person and you're nudging this person, I think, well, you're not always going to be looking out for their best interest, because it could be you could have an economic interest yourself. Well, I mean, what do you think about charlatans? Like, let's go there for a second, so I can I can try and understand this a little more. Charlatans basically, damn, I'm forgetting what a charlatan is. Are you able to explain what a charlatan is and what a charlatan does?
A charlatan in the sense of someone who's like pretending to be something else?
Yeah, okay. There's a good example of someone online. He's got like he doesn't have a bodybuilding physique, but he's like a really fit guy, and I can't remember. He's damn, dude, I'm drawing a blank. A charlatan.
Yeah, you mean someone who's pretending to be something that they're not, or signaling that they are that they are, they're an expert or something like that, but they're really not. Like it's a pretender, someone that's faking it.
Yeah, it's a little bit deeper than that, though. A charlatan is
like deliberately doing it is what I'm trying to like.
It's a way to manipulate people to sort of sell a product or an idea, right? Like, I can't remember what the product is. Basically, okay. So Andrew Tate sort of has this model, right? Andrew Tate, what he did is he started a, goddamn, I'm forgetting everything right now.
Discord community where you have to pay money per month?
That's it, right? Was it called Hustlers University?
No idea. I'm not a big follower of any of that. I always thought he was a charlatan to some degree. He said a lot of the right things, but yeah, the mechanism and the way he went about it, not a big fan.
Basically, he was utilizing, what is that website? Discord. He was using Discord as a way to organize information that you yourself could go out there and search for. And a lot of those Discord chat rooms were about how you can make money using Amazon, the one of the services Amazon has, for example, right? So he was supplying, like, I guess, I don't know if it was good information, but information on how you could have a side hustle alongside your job, or sort of start generating more money doing these things. But it wasn't anything new, right? It was just basically he just organized information into a few Discord chat rooms, and then you would pay money to get access to those chat rooms. So it's, in one way or another, it is a scam, but you are getting a service, right? So that is what a charlatan does.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some yeah, we could, like that. You're right. That is an example. There's some better examples we could definitely use. But okay, so what I'm trying to get at is the act of manipulating someone, or like specifically manipulating someone, in itself inherently evil, right? Because the reason I ask you that is because that's all we ever do with each other is manipulate each other, whether it's conscious or unconsciously. It's happening. We co-program each other because we co-inhabit a space, where we have feedback mechanisms. So, like, that's what it sort of seemed like you were saying. And the reason I asked the questions I was trying to lead you in a certain direction, and I was manipulating you, or trying to manipulate you, but you subverted my tactics, which was good on your part. So what I was doing was saying that you were trying to say that by manipulating or nudging these people in these directions, it's evil. And then I was saying, I was trying to get to the fact that that's what happens with mainstream media. That's what happens with the news. That's what happens with Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, with all of these algorithms. They all show you, recommendations or what you search for. But if you and I search for the same things, we're going to get two different responses because the AI is personalized, or the model is personalized to us to some degree. Like Google will have an algorithm for you, one for me. It'll be personalized to a degree. Right? So that's all happening at the moment, continuously. It's already happening. What I think you were sort of hitting at with AI is it's going to just get way, way easier to do that. And it's going to become way more effective. And it's going to become like embedded into everything that we do. And so it's just going to get like easier and more powerful in its ability to change people's perceptions and get them to do things in certain directions. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. You made a really good point that it is already happening as it is. This is just a more intrusive way of doing it, I suppose. Well, no, not.
That's right. It's not intrusive. It isn't good or bad. We've got to remember, like, nothing is inherently good or bad. It is what we make of it. Right. And so if you are not critically thinking, all right, and you're not trying to, if you're not trying to prove yourself wrong or develop a deeper understanding of your own self, your own biases, your own predispositions, and all of those different things, then it's going to be very easy for these things to take a hold and manipulate you in certain directions. And so it's like why it's important more now than ever to develop those skills, especially that critical thinking and developing that self-awareness, because then you can be you might be aware of when it's trying to lead you in a certain direction, and then you can subvert that. You can go, oh, that's interesting. They're really trying to get me to use this thing. I wonder why that might be the case. And then look in, you realize, oh, they just signed a deal with the parent company of this company, and that's why they might be trying to push it. Like we really have to develop our own skills. As the AI increases its intelligence, we need to increase our intelligence. That kind of makes sense. And so we want to learn how to interact with these things effectively and usefully. But if we don't, yeah, absolutely. This is just going to help like a few people control way more people at scale. Like it's just going to get bonkers and out of control.
I suppose people already love hyper personalization, right? They personalize their phones, their accessories, their web pages, their Instagram pages, Facebook pages. People have always enjoyed really personalizing things, right? Like having that utility on anything you buy, personalization is always a plus for for that product. People love feeling this is me, this is for me, my space, or whatever that may be. One of my concerns is that this has already opened up the door for people being more selfish than they were before because it's about me, me, me. And if you have a hyper personalized AI model, and it's just going to amplify that even more. But as I was thinking that, Rubes, I was taking into consideration what you were saying, and I thought, okay, meanwhile, that will happen to some people because those people are sort of, they have, you know, maybe they're not aware that it is happening. So that will be amplified in the types of people who are already have a baseline of being selfish, right? Whereas other people who are more aware of that and it doesn't affect their selfishness as much won't be affected in that sort of way, right? And will find many benefits of utilizing the personalization of an AI model to sort of optimize their time and complete tasks. But I see both sides of it now.
Yeah. So I have, I, I disagree with your use of selfish. I think selfishness is not a bad thing. I think selfishness is a very good thing. I think the common sort of definition or use or understanding of the word selfish is incorrect or inaccurate or not as useful as it could be. So I think selfishness is sort of like one of the only things people can be, right? And I think we should be selfish in that regard, but being selfish in a way that's also encompasses the fact that you should treat people how you would like to be treated, right? So if you're really selfish and you treat people how you would like to be treated, that to me is like leads to a good combination, because if you're very selfish and you really care about yourself so much, and then you treat people how you would like to be treated, but you really care about yourself, that means you're going to treat people in a really good way because you want them to treat you in a really good way, right? Like, and so I think that selfishness is not a bad thing. I think what the term I would use in what you were just describing was sort of self-absorbed, right? Become more self-absorbed. I think that's a dangerous thing. But yeah, that selfishness I think is a big thing. Another thing too is you mentioned just previously, you said the thing that would be better for them. I also think that's a flaw when we think about things like that. Like, we might think we know what's better for someone, but at the end of the day, it's up to that person, right? So you can talk to them, inform them, but at no point is it really up to you to do anything. If people ask you for help, maybe, you can show and do whatever. But at the end of the day, you should essentially just point them to the direction of information or knowledge that they could start to acquire to help make those or better informed decisions for themselves. That kind of thing. So, yeah, but I would just, the selfishness thing I think is often misinterpreted. I'm a fan of selfishness in that regard.
Okay. Can you expand on the self-absorbed portion then? You mentioned that you could see that being unhealthy or that becoming bad. Can you sort of expand on that?
Yeah, so I think self-absorbed versus selfishness, the self-absorbed thing is like that absorbing is the key difference, which would be like you just become entangled or enmeshed in your ownness, and then you forget that there are 8 billion other, conscious or, potentially conscious beings on this planet as well, who are having experiences that are not the same as yours, but there will be similarities in some sense. And so I think the self-absorbed can lead to sort of forgetting about all of that, whereas the selfishness, if you really care about yourself and you value that and you treat people how you would like to be treated, then you're that is a more interactive, more encompassing way of being. If that makes sense, as opposed to the self-absorbed thing, which is like all encompassing within yourself.
Do you think the same way we've become reliant on internet, we can also become self-reliant on AI? And if it's not really all that bad becoming self-reliant on internet, because we are functioning in that society now, right? I mean, internet goes off, but it's not the end of the world, because usually if you live in a place that has internet, it's not usually off for extended periods of time, right? But many people's jobs are reliant on that, for example. And if you become self-reliant on an AI model that's optimizing your time, if it's able to optimize your time in such a way more than internet is there an issue that could arise from becoming too self-reliant on AI models?
Of course. Like if you look at, we've become reliant on industrial food to some degree as in the Western world, to some degree, not wholeheartedly, but to some degree. So, if that whole apparatus was to break or, get destroyed overnight, the industrial food complex, right? If that was all to go away, like industrial farming and processing and all the rest of it, was to happen to that, lots of people would be really hungry. Lots of people would starve. But there's people who still hunt, who still grow their own animals, who still, have their own gardens and understand how to grow, vegetables and fruits and mushrooms and rear cattle and animals and all that kind of stuff. So there are still people that have that, but a large percentage of the population in those areas wouldn't be able to get the food that they used to or be able to sustain themselves because they've lost those skills, so to speak, because those skills haven't been as necessary because of the industrial farming and industrial food complex, right? So similar things can happen. Like with the internet, you explained, like if the internet shuts down, the whole world doesn't, stop working, so to speak, but large parts of it definitely do. We're just lucky that the internet hasn't stopped working for extended periods of time. We only ever have sort of short outages, and we never really have, whole outages across the entire globe at any one time. It'll just be, certain regions or sections of that network go out. Now with the AI stuff, yes, I think that can be a danger for sure. But again, if you're developing your self-awareness and your critical thinking, and you're utilizing the new AI technologies to automate tasks, but to also increase your rate at which you can learn, right? So I would say that's not becoming dependent on it. That's utilizing its usefulness, right? So it's like practically applying what it can be used for, and I think that leads to increased learning. And I think that there's no real downside to that for an individual or for a person. If you're utilizing it to do things that you could otherwise be doing, and then as it's doing those things, you no longer have the need to do those things, and then you sort of, don't make the most of your time, or you're not learning and upgrading or improving your health or whatever in some aspect, you're just, sort of squandering that time. I think that you will sort of de-evolve or, lose your edge, so to speak. And over time, that's very dangerous, especially if it stops working, because you'll be so out of practice, you'll be so unadapted to doing that work that now it's going to be very hard for you to start again. So I think that's where it is. Again, with all of these things, I think it's a spectrum, and there's going to be, the top end and the bottom end, or the upper bound and the lower bound of these things. And it's about, finding some balance in between.
Yeah, you made a really good point. And I have a little story about utilizing ChatGPT and CodePen to try and make a web page. So my experience was that ChatGPT essentially got me interested in learning how to code without even knowing it, because I attempted to ask ChatGPT to sort of make me HTML code. I also did it for Java in CodePen of what I wanted, and I laid out all the specifications, and we went through a couple of steps, and I finally got like a code that I could put in, and suddenly all these errors started popping up, right? I'm like, well, what's going on? What is this error, right? Why does it have an error? And then suddenly I'm getting interested in the lines of coding, and I'm like researching of why I'm getting these errors, how to fix the errors, and utilizing ChatGPT to sort of lead me down this educational path of coding, which I was never interested in before. So that's a really positive thing of utilizing AI models, is that for me, it stimulated interest in things I wasn't interested in before, and it sort of propagated me to learn these new things. And I think you've had a similar experience, right?
100%. 100%. It's increased my rate of learning significantly, like orders of magnitude. I'm able to now go from having an idea to having a working mock-up of that idea or a minimum viable product within a few minutes, sometimes within a few hours. And for bigger projects like building an entire web application that can tell you what your macros, based off your goal, what your macros should be, how many calories you should be eating to achieve your goal based off who you are, your age, etc. And then coming up with custom recipes and all sorts of a huge task that would normally take a team of developers or a very, very experienced full stack dev a few weeks or months to build. You can do it in a week or two. It's bonkers. Now, part of the reason why that is they're incredibly powerful. They're very good, specifically with the coding stuff. As you mentioned, and I laugh with the error codes, because yes, that is a very common thing, especially with GPT-3. GPT 3.5 or ChatGPT was much better, and GPT-4 is, from my experience so far, is even better than that. Now, part of the reason why that's the case, it's like having this personal assistant or this companion that can essentially help you, and you can utilize these things, or these models, like the AIs, as like experts or as a tutor, right? Or as like you can literally ask them whatever question whenever you want, 24/7. You don't not worry if they're asleep or they're in a bad mood or they don't know what you're talking about. Like, you can essentially get assistance, or at least make some progress towards something if you've faced a blockage or an error, right? So typically, with what you just explained with the error codes, typically you'd have to learn how to code something. Like, so you'd have to learn the basics of some programming language, which can be quite cumbersome, right? Especially if it's not intuitive towards you. You'd have to read the documents, and it's like learning a new grammar. You have to learn a whole bunch of new words and vocabulary and all this different stuff, and that takes time. It's really cumbersome. So you normally have to do that. That's pretty difficult. Then you'd have to try and start to mock up some code, and then you go to run it, you get an error. Then normally you'd have to go into like Google or Stack Overflow and try and figure out like, what does that error code mean, and like, how could I be getting it, and this and this and this. And it's a very long, tedious process. Whereas now with GPT-4 specifically, you can at a high level ask it, like, or tell it what you want, right? You can tell it what language you want it in, or don't even do that. Just tell it what you want and see what language it recommends. Okay. You can then take that. You can ask it, how do I run this? Like, how do I even run this? And it can tell you the instructions on, like, okay, open up a Colab notebook, paste this into the first cell, then in the next cell, paste this, run the first cell, then run the second cell, et cetera, right? It can do that for you. Then if you get errors, you can just take the error, paste it back in, right? And what I like to do, what I initially did, is just take the error, paste it in, get it to tell me something. What I do now is I like to look at the error. I like to think about, like, oh, what could this be? I'll try and challenge my own brain, come up with a hypothesis, right? And write that hypothesis down, okay? And go, okay, I think it's coming from this, this, and this. Then paste it back into ChatGPT, or test my hypothesis if it's easy for me to test, right? And if not, I just paste the error code straight back into ChatGPT and get it to provide a solution. All right. Now, typically you have to do this multiple times because it isn't the greatest at doing it, but GPT-4 has got better. But yeah, like you, it's massively accelerated my rate of learning, like beyond the joke how fast it is now.
What do you say to the people who are in that late adaptation phase? Because for some reason, when new technologies come out, there's always generations of people or large communities of people who are against it, and they argue points of how it's going to ruin civilization, how it's not going to be healthy, all these things. Like I remember when there was talks about that when the internet came out, right? So this is going to be another one of those things, right, where people are going to be late adopters and talking bad about AI, saying, for example, I'm not going to use it because I rather use my brain and I rather learn coding from learning it the right way, which is going and studying it or reading a book about it. Um, you know, how it's been learned up until this point, right? Because those late adapters, their argument will be, well, if I don't learn it that way, I'm not actually learning it. And if I just allow ChatGPT to do it for me, I'm not doing anything, and it's actually making me more stupid. What do you say to those people?
One, we're computationally bounded. Two, we have finite time, right? So you can either use that to do the low-level stuff, or you can use it to do really high-level stuff. And the high-level stuff is going to allow you to be way more productive. I'm going to say this. So this is the hot take, right? Being a pessimist is way easier than being an optimist, because it's always easier to point out the problems and the things that could go wrong, as opposed to trying to come up with solutions or novel ways to solve those problems, or to find the positive use cases for that stuff. It's just way easier to be pessimistic and point out the problems and the faults, as opposed to coming up with solutions, right? And that's why I think that broadly most people do. I also think that all these new language models are themselves a sort of Turing test, right? The Turing test was a test that Alan Turing came up with to sort of be able to differentiate, see if a sufficiently intelligent artificial intelligence was actually intelligent. Could you differentiate it from a human being, right? If you were talking to an AI, could you tell it's an AI? And that was it was called, the Turing test, right? And largely, I think most people, if they had no idea that they were interacting with GPT, would tell that it's GPT, right? But I also think that with this, it's kind of like a reverse Turing test, right? Where if you really try, if you engage with these things, you start to utilize them, you try to extract value from the models, you will get immense value. If you're just trying to be critical and find all the things that it does wrong, you're sort of wasting your time. Not wasting your time. It can be useful, but broadly it's not. And if you focus on all the negatives, you're going to get all the negatives. If you start to try and focus on what can be done, what's possible, then you'll start to explore that space. But I think, it's just way easier to be pessimistic than it is to be optimistic. It's way easier to point out problems than it is to come up with solutions.
Yeah. My argument for those people would be like, okay, so stop using a calculator then, right? To do math with.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
If that was their argument, definitely. That's the comeback. Stop using a calculator. Stop using your food processor. Stop using electricity. Stop using your car. Stop using everything.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is actually a personal argument that I've been having with someone.
Really?
Yeah, that's why I brought it up. What's that?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, someone in my family, and
are they 95 years old?
They're acting like it. So,
can I just quickly, 1 sec? Largely, I think it's probably fear, right? It's just it's fundamentally a lack of understanding what's really happening, and then essentially fear because of that lack of understanding or knowledge. Right? The more you start to understand this, and the more you realize what it's doing, the less fear there is. And the more experience you have with them, the less fear there is, because you realize that they're an incredibly powerful tool. And that's all they are, is a tool. And it's how you use it that really matters.
Yeah, I've been making jokes with them. I've been making so many jokes about that. But my favorite one was then stop using a calculator, right? Stop using all other technologies, because that is always the argument when a new technology comes out, that it's going to affect people in all these different ways. But the reality is that the technology is already out. So either you adapt to it or you're going to be left behind. That's just sort of the reality we live in. You can obviously live a life without using Chat GPT, but if you're especially the younger generations coming up, you will be left behind. You will be at a disadvantage if you don't learn how to use AI and you don't learn how to utilize it to optimize your life. That's my
Absolutely.
opinion.
So as a like great example of this, whilst we were talking, I just quickly typed in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I misspelled a word, right? 10 words. I typed 10 words into GPT-4. Write a piece about hyper-personalization in the age of AI. Okay, and I misspelled I put a W at the end, so it was the age of AI. Right, so not even right, and it knew exactly what I wanted. Well, not exactly, but it knew to a decent degree of approximation of what I wanted. Right, so it was. I'll just quickly read it.
Okay.
I'll try and read it with a little bit of in vigor or whatever. I'll try and make it less like I'm just reading off a screen. Okay, so title: Hyper-personalization in the age of AI, the new frontier of customer experience. Introduction. Artificial intelligence, also known as AI, has revolutionized various industries, and one area that has seen significant impact is marketing. In today's digital landscape, businesses strive to provide tailored experiences to capture and retain the attention of their customers. This quest for personalization has given birth to a new era of hyper-personalization, where AI plays a pivotal role in delivering relevant and individualized content to consumers. This piece explores the transformative power of hyper-personalization in the age of AI and the implications it has for businesses and consumers alike. Okay, so it goes into the evolution of personalization, enter hyper-personalization. The process goes beyond traditional demographic information, encompassing factors such as browsing history, social media interactions, and even the time of day a user is most active online. Right? We've got benefits for it, we've got the challenges and ethical considerations, and we've got a conclusion. This thing just pumped out like a legit, 1,000-word doc on hyper-personalization in the age of AI. And it did all of that while we were having a conversation. And all I needed to do was him. Okay. So case in point, this stuff. And now, is it going to be completely right? No. Is it a tool that you can utilize? Absolutely. Can you help it to distill information for you? Yes. Will you have to double check it? Yes, absolutely you will. And that's okay, because that's you doing some computation in your own mind, which means you're still using it, which means that it's not just, becoming nothing. It's forcing you to have to think as well. It's helping to develop a deeper understanding if you realize that they're fallible. The models are fallible, you're fallible. And if you can understand those two things, you can really utilize them well.
Bro, absolutely. What do you think is, okay, sorry, I'll back up a little bit. There was an article that I read a while ago about people protesting against AI models that are creating animations or pictures for, I think it was comics, people who draw comics, I believe.
Anyone who's ever put an image online is essentially their work's been ingested by the model, and now the model's generating these new images that can resemble those previous ones.
Yeah, so what do you think about that? What do you think about the whole argument how they're against, because it's going to essentially destroy art in one way or another, to
Maybe.
a sense, not completely actually, but what do you have to say about all those people that will probably lose jobs creating art?
I don't think they will. Some will for sure, but they won't be. I don't know. I got this weird thing, they won't be true artists. True artists create art to create art, not because of anything else. So why would they give a shit? If I just still keep creating my art, or people will start using AI to create art. At this point in time, the AI does not just create art; it needs you to prompt it to create the art. So you're still in the creation process, right? It's not just doing it automatically. Okay. So there's still that. On top of that, I think, we as humans, I think what large language models are sort of showing us is that that's kind of what we do as well. Like, you might think you're coming up with a completely new idea, but really you're informed by all the other things you've seen previously, whether you consciously know it or not. It's in your training data, if that makes sense. Like, are there really any new ideas under the sun, sort of thing, in that, like in that kind of sense? Like, and I think there definitely is. You can create new knowledge, absolutely, or you can come up with new ways to think about things, that kind of stuff. But with the art stuff specifically, I think it's going to make it easier for your average person to generate very compelling and high quality sorts of images and things like that, which I don't think is a bad thing. With the true artists, I think that they will have their own unique style. And I think that it's quite probable that in the future, things created by humans might become very unique and sought after, because the AI stuff will just be so abundant and available everywhere, if that makes sense. Like, because it'll be so easy to get AI to create what you want, that'll just be the norm, and so it won't be that special. Whereas the human creation might then really become very special because of the process that goes into it.
Throughout human history, there's always been progression in technology, which has eliminated many types of jobs, right? This is sort of the cycle, like the job cycle, or I don't know if you want to call it that, but technology always has been doing that. And because of technology, also a lot of new jobs have emerged as well. So although this could have an effect on the art industry in a way, there's going to be a lot of new jobs that will come out at the same time. And this is the natural progression of humans anyway. So I don't think that there's going to be suddenly a huge shortages of jobs because AI has advanced so quickly. This is all going to happen slowly, but surely. It's going to seem quick, but I'm saying that new jobs will be opening up as ones are closing down. There's going to be like a transition period. It's not going to be just all jobs close and then we have to wait for the jobs to open, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen really quickly. But I agree with you. I don't think it's just going to be like, oh, AI's taking everyone's job, and then all of a sudden so many people aren't. I think that there will be some displacement, like you said. But as you mentioned, with technology, jobs will be automated. Like certain tasks that humans have been doing will now be able to be done by machines, and at a very high level. But what that does is it frees us up to do other things at higher levels, right? At different levels of abstraction. So back to our example before with the food one, and the industrial food complex with industrial farming and manufacturing and processing and all that stuff. That freed people up time and energy wise. They didn't have to be going and doing those things with their food, cultivating food and farming and doing the rest. And they could then start to do other jobs. They could, this allowed people to move from regional more into the cities, where they could spend their time doing different things because they didn't have to spend their time gardening, growing, cropping, farming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They could now spend more of their time doing other things. And that's what this is going to do as well. It's just going to be possibly more extreme and faster than anything else in human history. And I think that, just last one is, I think that the gap between the haves and the have-nots is going to increase quite substantially, very quickly. And I do think that with this hyper-personalization, we do run the risk of sort of, the term NPC, non-player character, the NPC sort of becoming enslaved to the people that can wield the power of the AIs. I think that is a risk. And I think the best way to avoid that risk as an individual is to develop your critical thinking and self-awareness.
I think before, if you talked to many people and you told them that, oh, we're going to have a hyper-personalized AI robot, for example, that will be able to help you out, they would probably think of some sort of household robot where the robot is cleaning your room, doing the dishes, cooking you meals. But what I see that's currently happening, and that actually might happen one day, right? In the future, but what's actually happening now is that people are utilizing AI to sort of optimize their work and their jobs, right? To sort of do things, create things, not necessarily to, um, for it to do household chores for you. Like I think a lot of people concepted before, like now, like if we talked about this a few years ago, for example, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do think that you're probably right in saying that, on average, the average person's idea of, the AI is doing those jobs for them. But I don't know. There's this weird thing, right? And I don't want to come across as, you know, a douchebag or anything, right? Probably will. But the sort of less you know, the worse your takes are going to be on this. The more you know, you can either way sort of thing. But actually, that's not a good way to describe that. That's a bad way to describe it. Okay, so slightly controversial take. Don't want to come across as a douchebag. I think that's the common take on AI, like getting it to cook and clean and do all these kind of tasks for you. But I think that's just very simplistic and very low level, and it sort of shows the limitations of someone's imagination or their knowledge, right? Because the real gangster shit with AI is literally the ability to ingest like huge amounts of information and knowledge now with certain database, like with Pinecone and LangChain and GPT Index and these other tools that you can use with the large language models. And you can utilize them to develop your understanding of almost anything and come up with new experiments and hypotheses. And so it's just going to accelerate our ability to create knowledge. At the same time, it's going to accelerate our ability to create shit and misinformation and just absolute crap, right? But like, they're not mutually exclusive. It's going to increase the ability to do all of that. So I would prefer to use it for knowledge creation. And I think that, if that's the sort of frame you're looking to use it at, it's just going to be bonkers how amazing it will be. But I think that, if you don't, and I don't know if everyone will be using it for that. I think it's going to create some issues. Like I do think that gap is going to get really big really quick because the people that can use it will 10, 100, 1,000x, 10,000x their productivity and their ability to do things in the world. And the people that don't, or that are focusing on using it for silly stuff, just silly stuff, or they get manipulated by it, they're going to become enslaved to these things because they will be able to tell you everything you want to hear, etc.
I agree. I agree. What do you think universities are going to do now? Because generating an essay or a paper or report or a scientific article, I mean, it's so simplistic now that what do you think universities will do to sort of combat this age of AI?
Die. No,
No, go off on that. Let's talk about why it's going to kill universities.
It's harder. It's going to become harder and harder to justify or to do what they've been doing, right? Like, it's going to be hard to sell their methodology and what they've offered when you can utilize large language models the way that you can now. And this is like the early stages, and it's getting better, really quickly. Just going to become harder and harder. I think the value prop that universities will still have is the ability, like that networking in physical space, like the interacting and colliding with other people, if that kind of makes sense. I think that's still a value proposition for some universities. But broadly, I see them sort of potentially becoming quite redundant.
There's going to be some sort of transition period, right? I imagine that universities will try and attempt to sort of have programs which can detect or AI generated papers and reports. I'm not really sure how that could be possible, but I'm sure that there's going to be some sort of attempt to sort of that. And maybe, who knows, maybe they will succeed in being able to detect it until the AI models develop or evolve again, and that's going to become obsolete Again, so it's always going to be like this battle. I feel like, because do you remember in university, well, where I studied, we had to hand shit in on this platform, and it would basically go through it and let you know if there's any plagiarism. Did you have
Yeah.
to? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like it's sort of that, but because the AI model will generate a new paper each time you do it, it's not going to be the same paper each time. It's not like the AI model is only going to generate this one certain type of paper for this topic. It's going to, right? Like it's each
Yeah.
time it's going to be different. So how can you actually develop a model to identify an AI generated paper?
So some people already have. This has been an active area already. Some people have developed large, like, other models to detect if a text is generated by a large language model, or with a probability, like with a probability X, this was generated by a large language model. Okay, so that's already happening. But yeah, that platform you mentioned, right, with the plagiarism, the most hilarious thing was there was such an easy way to subvert its ability to do that. And it was just to change your text color to white, put a quotation mark at the beginning of what you plagiarized in white. Okay, so it blended into the background. And at the end of it, put it in white as well. And it would never pick it up because it was a direct quote. I used that many a time.
Are you fucking serious?
I did it for a whole assignment once, and I got like a whatever score of 0. And then that flagged the system because you never get a plagiarism score of 0 because you're always copying what someone else says or whatever. And it's because I did the whole fucking thing in quotes. But that only worked like that. That worked. It didn't work in that case. That was stupid of me. It's just seeing what it could do. Yeah. Anyway, there's always going to be ways to work around this. It's going to be a continuous battle. If you don't allow people to utilize these large language models or AIs to do and to help them with their work, you're going to be handicapping these people greatly, because these are tools of leverage, right? You can leverage the AI for amazing things, or you can leverage it for shitty things, or you can let it do all your thinking for you, and you can dissolve your brain into a pile of mush, and not have the ability to think anymore for yourself. Or you can be taken advantage of by these AIs, and you will become enslaved by them. But yeah, I think the value proposition of the university is declining rapidly, especially with these large language models. I think there is still some advantage with the networking and the access to resources and stuff like that. But now with this personalization, it's just getting crazier and crazier. Like I said, I can now do idea to testable product, or way to test my hypothesis in a matter of minutes, on the shortest time scale, and days or maybe even weeks for really big things. And previously that wasn't possible. And I might have to go to a university to ask somebody a specific question because they were an expert in the field. Whereas now I can take all their work that they've ever published, push it into a language model, get it to create summaries of summaries of summaries, and I can start to query that in a chat format and ask it questions about the research that this person's done. And it doesn't matter if that professor or that expert might be angry, tired, sleepy, hungry, any of those things. And when I ask them the question, that could influence the way they answer me. Whereas this chatbot is not going to have that same problem. So yeah, I don't know. It's pretty crazy.
That's a really good point. I always found it really interesting when we were in university groups that basically if you didn't have university access, you couldn't access certain articles, for example, or certain places that publish articles. And I always thought that was so crazy. And I remember having a lot of professors that also were against that, and they were pushing this idea of I don't remember, just
Open
free
source.
access. Yeah, that's it. Open source, right? And look at how before there's open source, people were controlling information, or at least putting a cost on it, which I think is absurd. But I get it. It's from a business standpoint. I understand it. But now that is completely impossible to do with these new AI models, I agree with your point 100%, because now the universities are losing the control of information because the floodgates have been opened. So what benefit is there to getting a university education other than the paper that you get in the end that can sometimes help you get in certain jobs, or the connections that you make going there? Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you made a really good point.
So think about it this way, right? If I'm wanting to get a job with Google or Facebook or any of these businesses, I can now have an idea that I think might be really good for Google, Facebook, or whatever, and I can go into ChatGPT and I can say, okay, I've got this idea. I want to do this thing for Gmail. Da 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 da. How does Gmail work, and how could I get started on a project like this, or how could I write some code to do this? Bang, 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 bang. It can help me out. I can go through. I can get all the error codes, go back in, get something working. Then I can post that online and say, hey, how's this feature for Google or Gmail that I just created? What does everyone think? And if people start liking it and using it, right, I've just created the best resume I could ever create to get a job at Google or Gmail, or you know what I mean? Like, I just don't see the value of the university as much anymore, specifically now. It's been declining for quite a while, but I think now it's really dropping off a cliff. But with all of this, right, I really want to and this is not a doomer thing. I really don't think this is a doomer thing. I think that this is a crazy time, and I think that these things have happened throughout history. But I do think that we need to be aware, there is going to be a huge advantage to people who immerse themselves in the space, who are willing to change what they think they know or learn, continue their learning and embrace this technology to explore what's possible in the universe. And I think that if you don't do that, there is a decent probability that you will become enslaved to the people who are utilizing these things, or to these things themselves, if that kind of makes sense. But I think I think we're going to have, all right, I think we're going to realize the mythological sort of stories of our past where we had the gods. And I think that AI is going to help people become true gods. But I don't think it's going to be for every person. I think that there will be, certain people who become gods sooner than others or before others. And those gods will likely control a good chunk of people underneath that, whether it's because they consciously want to, or indirectly just because they created the things that end up that the consumers end up loving so much that they become enslaved to it, especially with this hyper-personalization. Got any takes on that?
Can you give me an example of what specifically? Give me an example of a product.
Well, your companion one. It's just a matter of time before somebody does this, right? Let's be real. I've got, I don't know, I can get up my notes right now and I can just go through how many times I've written this down, about making an AI assistant that gets to know you better than you know yourself and could really help you to unlock your potential and achieve things. That can be really valuable. But then also, if you start to nudge that model in a certain direction, or start to get it to try and influence the people that it's engaging with, and they trust, trust is a dangerous thing. Okay, if people start trusting these things wholeheartedly, then you could easily, like you said, you can easily manipulate them. If it just is oh, this model has never led me astray, and then you're do this, and it does it, it's just going to be bonkers. Okay, so, but as an example, say Google, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon start launching these large language models with Alexa or Siri or these assistants. You don't have to book, don't worry about managing your calendar anymore. Your AI will do it for you. Don't worry about even what we've built with the good meals, with nutrition. Don't worry about your nutrition anymore. Let the AI tell you. The tools are now going to get so good and so personalized that lots of what we would normally have to think about and be educated in, you won't need to be so much anymore, right? Because it will be able to be done for you. But that's also very dangerous.
Yeah, no, I understand why it could be dangerous. So I just want to talk about some of the positives of that, right? So let's say that you had an AI assistant, like you said, and they were able to schedule your appointments, schedule your meetings, whatever it may be, and also organize your meals, what you're going to be eating, how many calories, all that. So everything is sort of generated for you, which gives you the ability to think about and do so many other things. You don't have to worry about what you're going to be buying to make, what you're having to make, setting up meetings when the AI is able to communicate with other AIs, and the AIs will essentially be building those schedules for the user, especially if we look at work, right? There's no longer, oh, like when does everyone have time to meet? No, the AIs communicate. They set up a time that's best convenient to each user based on, yeah, just because it's personalized. So
Everything
it's, yeah, it already knows when you have a dentist appointment, right? When you got to take your kids to school, and it's going to place a block right there and let you know you have a meeting with Rubes at 10 o'clock on Monday morning. And it lets you know ahead of time again, right? And it says the meeting is about this, and it sends you all the information that you need to have prepared for that meeting, right? So all that little mundane, like little tasks are now given to you by the AI. Now I'm trying to think of what's negative about that. That actually sounds fucking dope. Like that would be so cool, right? Having that.
it is it is dope to a degree, but it's also incredibly dangerous because, like, then if it's doing all of these things for your life, you're not having to think about these things. It could easily lead you astray. It could easily start to manage your entire life and take away some of your, your spontaneity or your joy. Or imagine if it gets to a point where, okay, so, it wants to keep you optimal. Polska's got to achieve optimally because he's got these goals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so you're, all of a sudden a meeting comes up. You're going to the beach, right? And you're in your really nice electric car that's autonomously driving you. So you're not even having to worry about it. You're there and you're reading some old book, right? Because you really love the tactile nature of a book, right? And so you're sitting there reading your book. Then next minute the car just takes a sudden turn and it's taking you somewhere else. And you go, whoa, 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 where are we going? I'm going to the beach. He goes, no, you're not. We've scheduled a meeting for you with this, this, and this because it will optimize your schedule over the next da 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 da. Right? Like there's this sort of trade-off with all of that, right? Like it's just really positive, but could also be very dangerous, right? So we got to make sure you have your autonomy, so to speak, and we got to be careful because as it gets so personalized, essentially it will get to know you better than you can really know yourself in certain circumstances. And it's fucking crazy.
That's true, dude. That is such a good point because the AI will say, no, this is a better use of your time, and it will present you arguments for why. And then you sort of, well, I guess I'm not going to the beach then. The AI is right. Gotta listen to the AI.
And, is it or is it not? So these are all things that are going to come up. Oh, look, I'm full for embrace the AI and make sure that we utilize it to explore the universe of possibilities. I think that's fantastic. But we've got to make sure that we're not trying to optimize, right, too much, because optimizing sort of seems to take the joy out of a lot of things. So you don't want to try and optimize too much. But again, if we can utilize it to help automate certain tasks, fantastic. Do we want to become fully dependent or reliant on it? No way. No way. That's a very dangerous thing to do. So we have to be mindful of these things and remember to use it as a tool, not become completely self-reliant or dependent on it. And I think that unless you're developing that critical thinking, that self-awareness, it's going to become very, very easy to become self-reliant on these things, right?
Yeah.
Think about it with porn, okay? So with Mid-Journey 5 and image generation and different technologies, you can now create these videos from stuff like, people that have very strange kinks or whatever, that they would normally have to go on the dark web to find some sick stuff or go to some, very strange underground club to try and participate in these strange kinks. We'll now just be able to create that in real time, through a VR headset and be able to experience it in that sort of circumstance. Like, think about OnlyFans, chicks creating OnlyFans content, Right? You think that AI is like not going to destroy that completely? Like AI models are going to become, way like hyper sexualized and attractive to the human senses than any human can sort of become. No amount of, Botox or whatever will be able to do that. Filters might be able to do that, but again, that's a digital thing. So it's just, like so many things are going to change. It's going to be bonkers.
There's going to be so many people pushing the make sure you're a disciplined AI user thing, because for example, if you're going to the beach and you if you are a disciplined AI user, you actually let the AI know, listen, if I'm doing me time, if I'm going to the beach, or if I'm doing like XYZ, you are not allowed to schedule meetings for me at those times. And you're going to have to be a very disciplined AI user to sort of train your model and not to interfere with your personal life. And like you said, it's not always best to always optimize for time. But the people who are sort of addicted to optimizing their time are really going to let it get out of control, and they're going to need AI addiction therapy.
Will it be an AI therapist?
Yeah.
Real quick, right? But what if, okay, so you say you're not allowed to schedule these things, etc. When I say I'm going to the beach, I'm going to the beach. Well, what if it's been watching the satellites over that beach and it knows that there's a shark or 3 or 4 sharks in that proximity, and that there's a higher probability chance of you getting bitten or eaten by a shark by going to the beach at that time?
Then I just won't go in the water. I'll just chill on the beach. I'll still go enjoy the sand, and then creep up to the water a little bit. Look, I don't see any sharks here, man. Fucking, I'm gonna risk it, get in the water, just quick, just up to my waist. I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
And then you'll become marketing for the AI companies. Don't be like Pulse. When your AI tells you not to go swimming, don't go swimming. That'll be a picture. One leg. Okay, so with all of this, it's exciting and scary, right? As it should be. Okay. But with all of these things, it really is important. Like, we are conscious beings. Okay. We observe and we experience things. There is something that it is like to be us, right? As individuals. And remembering that that's a very important thing. And to make sure that you utilize or you use these tools, don't let them use you, right? And to second guess and question things, and like, again, that critical thinking sort of stuff. But with the AI stuff, with this hyper-personalization, there is a sense in which you will be able to get almost anything you want whenever you want it. And so you have to be careful in how you lean into that, or which direction you go into that, right? So we spoke about this on a previous pod with child actors and things like that, young stars, and how if you get used to getting what you want whenever you want, it can sort of change. It can influence the way your personality develops, and it can change your reward system and the pathways and your entire being, really. So I think that with AI, there's the chance that, like, your average person could develop those sorts of traits that only a child actor or child star or someone very famous or part of a royal family otherwise would have. And I think that's dangerous. And if we lean into the comforts and our our urges in that regard, it could be very dangerous. Whereas if we slow down a little bit and try to think, how can we utilize these things in ways that help us to become more than what we previously were, not just give in to those sorts of immediate gratification things, I think we've got a better chance.
Be a disciplined AI user.
Yes, self-control to some degree.
All right, remember, guys, we're just 2 idiots trying to figure out what this shit's all about. So take it for what you will. If you have any comments, please write them. If we're a bunch of idiots, tell us why. If we're wrong on something, let us know. If we're right on something, let us know. But just comment. We would love to hear from you guys. Also, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel.
Well said, Guy. Yes, and if you don't think we went over enough topics in this with hyper-personalization or use cases, because I don't know, we didn't really give a huge list of the different use cases, right? We just sort of bounced around a couple of different ones. Let us know, because we can put out another pod or a list of these things with all the sorts of areas that this can really affect. We have been thinking about it for a while, and we've been having some conversations in private about this, and it's a pretty big moment. It really is. So yeah, if you're interested in that, let us know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time and energy and consuming this content. Peace.
All right, peace, bro. Love you. Bye.